Mayor Vance contracted me to locate a cougar. The issue was, cougars do not employ keys to open rear entrances, and they definitely do not position the skeletons of their prey in symmetrical designs. Red Rock was not enduring an animal assault. It was conducting a ceremony, and I was the unwelcome visitor. The settlement materialized in my windshield like an illusion that declined to vanish. 3 hours south of Reno, beyond the location where cellular signals vanished and the GPS began disputing with itself, Red Rock rested in a basin of reddish-hued rock like a molar in a diseased jaw. Population 847, according to the sun-faded sign. The figure appeared recently repainted, which was the initial aspect that disturbed me. I drove my pickup onto the primary roadway. They named it Founders Avenue, because naturally they did, and instantly sensed the unnaturalness descend upon my skin like arid sand. The structures were antique, late 1800s architecture, but every facade had been freshly coated. Vibrant yellows and blues that failed to align with the historical era. The pavements were spotless. No rolling weeds, no litter, no discarded cigarettes near the tavern. In a declining Nevada mining community, that level of tidiness was not community pride. It was disguise. Principle number 1, pathology before supernatural. I had discovered that the difficult way in Provo, pursuing what residents insisted was a Wendigo, only to discover an especially inventive serial murderer with a background in mythology and a bone cutter. Beasts were genuine, but usually the most dangerous beast was simply a person with opportunity and intent. Therefore, I assessed Red Rock the manner I would assess a crime location. Excessively orderly, excessively managed, cleansed of traces. 2 individuals stood outside the grocery shop, both in their 60s. They were conversing when I arrived, lively discussion, gestures active. The instant I turned off the motor, they halted mid-motion, rotated, gazed, then grinned in flawless synchrony, and resumed chatting, but softer now, postures turned aside. My boots struck the asphalt, and a lady tending flower containers opposite the road offered me a greeting so intensely amicable, it seemed like an alert. I had visited communities like this previously, locations where everybody recognized everybody, and outsiders were either curiosities or dangers. But Red Rock's welcome possessed a trait I could not yet identify. It was not distrust. It was closer to performance anxiety, as if I had entered a stage mid-act, and no one had provided me the lines. The mayor's workspace was in the municipal building, a 2-level brick structure that appeared to have endured solely through resentment. Mayor Eli Vance greeted me at the entrance personally. Mid-50s, plump around the waist, sporting a bolo tie with a turquoise fastener the dimensions of a kid's fist. His palm was moist and extended 2 seconds excessively. "Miss Finch, thank heavens you're present," he stated, guiding me indoors with the haste of a person welcoming a repairman amid a burst pipe. "We have been frantic. 3 incidents in 2 months. The community is frightened." His workspace reeked of stale coffee and fresh despair. The surfaces were adorned with pictures, ribbon ceremonies, event photos, a significantly younger Vance clasping hands with a state legislator, all depicting a prosperous society that the roadway outside refuted. He noticed me observing. "Better times," he remarked without my inquiring. "The mine shut in 2003. We have been adapting." "Describe the incidents," I stated, retrieving my notepad. "Details first, story afterward." He passed a slim folder across his workspace. 3 casualties, all on the town peripheries. "All well, you will observe. Sheriff Briggs is prepared to escort you to the most recent location. We have left everything untouched. You arrived strongly endorsed, Miss Finch. Folks claim you are meticulous. Folks claim I am costly. Funds are not the concern." He uttered it overly swiftly. In a fading mining settlement, funds were invariably the concern. "We simply desire this halted prior to visitor season." I refrained from noting that Red Rock did not appear to possess a visitor season. I accepted the folder and departed him, perspiring in his cooling system. Sheriff Briggs was reclining against his patrol vehicle outdoors, a figure formed completely of acute edges and solar harm. Late 40s, silver at the temples, gaze like steel. He acknowledged once upon seeing me, not a salute, merely in recognition of my presence. and entered the driver's position without utterance. The incident site was a 15-minute journey north, a modest farm estate that seemed deserted even prior to whatever occurred there. Briggs stopped at the terminus of the soil path and ultimately spoke. Casualty's identity was Dale Cortez, 63, resided solitarily. Closest resident is 4 miles south, claimed he isolated himself. We located him 2 days past when his retirement payment was not redeemed. He guided me beyond a corroded vehicle and 3 wild-appearing hens to the rear area. That is where my objective distance began to fracture. Dale Cortez was arranged in the middle of the lawn, or whatever survived of him. The corpse had been prepared. That was the sole term for it. The tissue was removed precisely from the skeletons in most areas, but not ripped, sliced with accuracy. The skeletons themselves were positioned in a design, a radiating pattern that evoked a wind rose. The cranium faced eastward, the elongated bones directed to primary directions. The minor bones, digits, phalanges, costals, shaped circular rings among them. Cougar, Briggs stated bluntly. Observing my expression, I knelt beside the remnants, donning rubber gloves. Cougars are stealth attackers. They slay with a nip to the throat or cranium, then haul the remains somewhere hidden to consume. They do not position their meal. I indicated the incisions on the bone. These are precise, no dental traces. Something edged created these cuts. Might be carrion arrived later. Might be. I retrieved my loop and inspected the bones further. In the channels of multiple incisions, there existed a delicate reddish-brown dust. I contacted it with a protected digit and rubbed it against my thumb. Sandstone powder. I surveyed the lawn. The soil was compacted earth and sparse vegetation. The closest sandstone structure was the ridge, at minimum 2 miles west. Then I observed the rear entrance. It was shut, secured per Briggs, but the frame was undamaged. No splintering, no compelled access. I approached and examined the latch. No marks, no harm. You mentioned he was discovered in the lawn. Who discovered him? I did. Received a notification from welfare about the payment. Entrance was secured from within. Had to enter via a pane to access. Found the residence vacant and him outside here. Secured from within, I echoed. Principle number 1 was resounding now. A hunter did not secure entrances. A hunter did not position skeletons in symmetrical designs, but an individual did. An individual with access, with opportunity, with intent, who otherwise possessed entry to this estate. As far as we understand, no one. Dale lacked companions, lacked relatives. What regarding adversaries? Briggs' expression remained unchanged, but his quiet did. It extended, developed fangs. Not the type that would perform this. Principle number 2, culpability possesses an odor. Briggs was not deceiving precisely, but he was remaining extremely motionless. The manner you do when attempting not to alarm something. And I understood I was not the sole one assessing traces. He was observing me, gauging my responses, relaying back in his mind to somebody. I dedicated another hour at the location, capturing images, gathering specimens. The sandstone powder was present everywhere once I began searching in the injuries, on the soil, even a thin layer on the entrance knob. I secured it all, marked it, attempted to integrate it into a structure that aligned. By the moment I completed, the sunlight was commencing its decline, and the basin shadows were extending lengthy and chilly. Briggs transported me back in quiet. He left me at the Dusty Rose Inn, the sole lodging in town, and departed without a utterance. I registered with a receptionist who grinned excessively and posed no inquiries, which indicated she already possessed all the responses. The greeting meal was at 6. Mayor Vance had demanded, "The municipal board desires to encounter you. Demonstrate their gratitude." It was not an invitation. In my background, when a whole settlement desired to demonstrate gratitude prior to you accomplishing anything, they were either extremely appreciative for your arrival or extremely committed to managing your account. The meal was hosted at a venue named Helen's, a restaurant that appeared to have been adorned by somebody's grandma and then preserved in resin. The board was already present when I entered. Vance Briggs, a slender lady presented as Helen personally, a farmer called Kovac, and a pair named the Delaney's who operated the grocery shop. They had combined 2 tables and arranged sufficient meals for double our count. The initial 15 minutes were intensely ordinary. They inquired about my journey, my lodging, my history. I provided them the revised account. Criminal examiner, independent operator, focused on atypical incidents. I omitted Provo or the entity in Ta, or why I had abandoned my role with the state. They assented along, grinning, sharing platters. Then Vance cleared his throat. We desire you to understand, Miss Finch, that Red Rock is a decent settlement, a secure settlement. This circumstance, it is an anomaly. Misfortune, truly. Feral canines likely, or a stray feline. We simply desire it settled swiftly and discreetly. Discreetly, I echoed. Small settlements exist and perish by image, Helen stated, her tone warm as tainted nectar. We cannot tolerate a scare. Cannot tolerate individuals believing Red Rock is hazardous. 3 individuals are deceased. 3 separate events, Kovach interjected. All on the peripheries. All individuals who... He halted himself, but I perceived the remainder of the phrase in the pause. All individuals who were insignificant. Principle number 2 once more, but intensified now. The silences were excessively lengthy. The grins failed to contact their gazes. Every individual at this table was reciting from the identical script, and they were frightened I had detected the error. Who were the additional 2 casualties? I inquired. Another silence. Vance retrieved a compact notepad. Janet Hollis, 47, traveled through settlements seeking employment. Remained approximately a week prior to, and prior to her, Marcus Webb. He possessed some difficulties, addiction problems, resided in a mobile home near the former mining path. Marginals, passers-by, dependents, individuals on the edges, individuals nobody would notice. Principle number 3 was illuminating like a holiday display. I grinned and consumed my beef roast and allowed them to believe I trusted them. Following the meal, I informed them I required to acquire some items and strolled Main Street as the illumination faded. Most stores were shut, but at the distant end of the roadway, beyond the mail office and the closed tool shop, I discovered what I was seeking, a modest, drooping structure with a manually painted sign that stated Curios. The entrance rang when I entered, a fragile noise. The store was a disordered cavern of regional artifacts, dream snares, turquoise ornaments, coyote crania, cards of vistas that failed to resemble anywhere close here. Behind the register sat an aged lady with epidermis like worn hide and gaze that appeared roughly a millennium ancient. I surmised, though I understood better than to inquire directly. Assist you locate something? Her tone was powder and vapor. I am seeking regional lore tales regarding the region. Visitor centers shut. I am not a visitor. She examined me for an extended instant. Then she rose gradually and proceeded to a rack behind the register. She retrieved a thin, hide-bound volume, not available, I could determine, and opened it to a section noted with a raven plume. The rock here is ravenous, she stated, not reciting, simply uttering. It consumes mysteries initially, then tissue. You are a lady who seeks for reality. Beware it does not locate you initially. I sensed the warmth in the store decline. What do you imply? You are positioned in Red Rock posing inquiries. That implies you have already received falsehoods. She shut the volume. They will continue deceiving until you cease inquiring or until you integrate into the deception. That is how it operates. That is how it has invariably operated. How? What operates? But she merely shook her head and replaced the volume to its position. You desire reality? Proceed to the ridge at nightfall. Observe the former mine, but prevent them from observing you observing. And do not persuade yourself you can repair what is damaged here. Some elements are not damaged. They are simply constructed incorrectly from the beginning. I purchased a container of water I did not require and departed. Outdoors, the roadway was vacant. The illuminations in the structures were cozy and golden, but they failed to repel the obscurity so much as cluster against it. I proceeded back to the lodging. my thoughts processing through traces and improbabilities. My chamber was on the second level, oriented north toward the ridge and the bony remnants of the Eternity Mine. I bathed, recorded observations, attempted to construct a profile that aligned. Unsuccessful. At some moment I surrendered and simply positioned at the pane, gazing out at the obscurity. That is when I observed them. It was slightly past midnight. The settlement was hushed. The variety of profound silence that solely exists distant from urban areas. Then I detected motion near the foundation of the ridge. Illuminations dim and fluttering. Torches. I understood a lineup of them advancing in orderly fashion up the former mining route. I seized my field glasses. 6 forms, perhaps 7, proceeding in quiet. They were transporting something among them, a package enveloped in fabric or sackcloth. Approximately the dimensions and form of a person body. They advanced with intent, not hastening, not pausing, a ceremony. At the foundation of the mine access, they halted. I could not discern specifics at this range, but I observed the figures assemble in a ring, observed the package positioned down in the middle. Then I shifted left and sensed my abdomen sink. Sheriff Briggs's vehicle was stationed on the entry route about 50 yards from the mine. Front lights off, motor operating, simply waiting there in the obscurity, observing. The lineup remained at the mine for perhaps 10 minutes. Then they retrieved the package, less heavy now, I believed, or perhaps that was my fantasy, and proceeded back down. The vehicle waited until they departed, then gradually, without illuminations, transported back toward settlement. I remained at that pane for another hour, but nothing further stirred. The wilderness was hushed. The mine access was a dark opening in the ridge, and Red Rock rested the rest of the righteous or the condemned. I did not rest at all. I did not rest that evening. I positioned at the lodging chamber workspace and compiled inventories of elements that failed to correspond, which proved to be everything. By sunrise, I possessed an operational hypothesis. Red Rock was concealing a homicide group. The casualties were chosen, the demises ceremonial, the society accomplice. It was structured, methodical, and had been functioning for sufficient duration that everybody had mastered their roles. What I lacked was reason or evidence that would endure anywhere beyond my own mind. I required records. Settlements like this maintained documents. They could not resist themselves. The more horrific the mystery, the more meticulously they stored it. The municipal building opened at 8. I was there at 7:50, awaiting on the stairs with a container of fuel-stop coffee and my qualifications prepared. The receptionist who opened the entrance was a lady in her 60s with spectacles on a chained cord. She grinned when she observed me, but it was the grin of somebody who had been instructed to be supportive. Ms. Finch, Mayor Vance stated you might require entry to our documents. I value that. I am seeking archival materials. Anything related to demises, vanishings, or atypical events dating back to the settlement's establishment. She guided me down a slim stairway to a cellar that reeked like fungus and aged paper. The storage were unexpectedly orderly, lines of storage units, marked containers, a station with an adequate light. She indicated vaguely at the assemblage. Assist yourself. I will be above if you require anything. I commenced with the formal documents. Demise records, medical examiner accounts, deputies' records. They were immaculate. Nearly dull. Natural reasons, mishaps, the rare tavern brawl. Nothing that clarified 3 ceremonial slayings in 2 months. The documents were excessively pristine, which indicated the actual documents were elsewhere. I labored methodically, inspecting behind folders, searching for hidden compartments and compartments, assessing containers that appeared too lightweight for their markings. It required 2 hours before I located it, concealed behind a moisture-damaged container of estate documents from the 1920s. A hidebound register, unlabeled, dense with powder. The sheets were fragile. The script faded sepia. The penmanship was 19th century, ornate, exact. The initial record was dated April 15, 1898. The title stated the offering register by directive of the Board of Red Rock. Beneath that, an inventory, identities, dates, and a solitary term under a section marked Cause. Jeremiah Stokes, April 15, 1898. Intruder, Mary Callahan, July 20th, 1898. Volunteer Samuel Chen, October 12, 1898. Swindler. The records persisted. 4 annually, separated 3 months apart. Quarterly tributes. The cause is different. Debtor, wanderer, agitator, volunteer. But the design was uniform. The inventory continued for sheets covering more than 100 years. The penmanship shifted as various keepers assumed, but the ceremony persisted. I turned to the latest records, my palms trembling slightly. Marcus Webb, October 8th, 2024. Dependent Janet Hollis, January 11th, 2025. Wanderer, Dale Cortez, April 9th, 2025. Debtor, Dale Cortez. The individual whose skeletons I had assessed yesterday, positioned in the soil like a windrose. He was not a casualty of an animal assault. He was an entry in a register, a quarterly installment. Principle number 3 ignited in my thoughts. The marginals are the indicators. Every identity in this register was somebody on the fringes. Individuals lacking kin, lacking funds, lacking influence. Individuals who could vanish and the world would adapt around the void like fluid around a rock. I captured every sheet with my device, then placed the register under my limb. This was not returning into concealment. Above, the receptionist gazed up from her screen. Her gaze shifted to the register, and something in her expression became extremely motionless. Locate what you required. I did. Thank you. I proceeded directly to the mayor's workspace. His entrance was shut, but I did not rap. He was speaking on the telephone, but he disconnected swiftly when he observed what I was holding. His expression became ashen. Miss Finch, I can clarify. You are going to? I placed the register on his workspace. It struck with an impact that seemed like a hammer. Describe the offering. For an extended instant, he simply gazed at it. Then he performed something I did not anticipate. He chuckled. It was a fractured, drained noise. Heavens, I informed them we should have destroyed that item years past. But no, custom heritage. He massaged his expression. Position down. This is going to require a moment. I remained positioned. He exhaled and opened the register, not reciting it, simply contacting it like it might scorch him. In 1898, the Eternity Mine struck a wealthy scene, but the workers penetrated into something else, an interment location, holy terrain. They failed to understand or failed to mind. They plundered it. 3 days later, the slayings commenced. What slayings? The Stonecoat Group. Shapeshifters, if you prefer the mythic label. They are the protectors of that location. They arrived for the workers, tore them limb from limb. The settlement was perishing, Ms. Finch. Individuals were escaping, those who could. The establishers possessed a selection. Desert Red Rock or Forge an Accord. He was discussing this like it was an employment discussion. An accord, the pact. 4 occasions annually, we supply an offering, an existence. In return, the group ceases slaying randomly. More than that, they safeguard the basin. They repel the actual terrors. The actual terrors, I echoed plainly. The wailing entities. He uttered it like the terms themselves were hazardous. They wander in the profound wilderness. Appetite granted shape. The stone coats repel them. Without the pact, without the group upholding the limit, Red Rock would not endure a week. The whole basin would be devoured. Principle number 4, mythology is a criminal account. He was delivering this as reality, as official procedure, not legend, not delusion, foundation. You are informing me this settlement has been slaying individuals for over 100 years to placate beasts. I am informing you this settlement has endured for over 100 years because our establishers were practical. His tone stiffened. You believe I enjoy this? You believe any of us do? We choose individuals who are already on the brink. We render it swift. We reimburse kin. It is 4 existences annually, Ms. Finch. 4. In return, 843 individuals reside in tranquility. That is not tranquility. That is a captivity circumstance. Name it what you desire. It is the actuality we inhabit. He shut the register. You desired to understand why the incidents appeared ceremonial. Now you understand. There are no incidents. There is an agreement and Dale Cortez's identity appeared. His obligations were overwhelming. His kin will be cared for. The mechanism functions. I gazed at it. He trusted it. He truly trusted that organized slaying was a sensible official resolution. I am going to halt this. You cannot. He was not menacing. He was simply declaring reality. The pact is older than both of us. It is embedded into the bases of this settlement. You shatter it and we all perish. Not swiftly either. I seized the register and departed him positioned there out on the roadway. The sunlight was intense and the atmosphere was pure. And somewhere close, a canine was yelping. Ordinary. Except nothing here was ordinary. And I had just been informed that the ordinary was constructed on a quarterly tribute. I returned to my lodging and cross-checked the register against official documents I retrieved from internet sources. Every solitary identity matched the outline. Dependents, nomads, individuals with offense histories, individuals with health obligations or betting issues, individuals who had provoked issues or simply possessed no one to observe when they disappeared. Red Rock did not merely possess a mystery, it possessed a mechanism, a device that recognized, chose, and devoured its own fringes to maintain the core undamaged. And everybody understood, the board, the deputy, likely half the settlement. They had reconciled with it because the option, whatever the wailing entities were, was inferior. I required to observe the mind. I required to observe where this transpired. The sunlight was descending when I transported the entry route north. The Eternity Mine was a wound on the ridge, a dark opening bordered with caution markers and corroded fencing. I stationed and proceeded the final 100 yards, my criminal kit in one palm and my torch in the other. The access was a wood-framed passage leading into obscurity. The terrain around it was compacted soil, and in the slanted dusk illumination, I could observe trails, not footprints, something else. Extended dragging traces like taloned limbs, and that delicate red powder dispersed everywhere. I was about to advance nearer when the noise ceased, not diminished, ceased. The aviaries, the breeze, the remote hum of my pickup's cooling motor, all of it severed off like somebody had flipped a lever. The atmosphere became chilly, acute enough that I could observe my exhalation. I rotated gradually. It was positioned at the forest edge, perhaps 30 yards distant, human form, but incorrect. Its epidermis appeared like fractured sandstone, slabs of reddish-brown rock that altered as it shifted. Its gaze were dark quartz, multifaceted and mirroring nothing. It did not proceed so much as glide, its motions too fluid, too watery for something composed of rock. My palm went to the metal blade in my strap. The entity inclined its head, the motion unnaturally acute, an avian examining victim. It advanced a step forward, then another. It was near enough now that I could detect it inhale, a noise like breeze through a ravine. It bent in and inhaled the atmosphere near me. I remained extremely motionless. It encircled, evaluated. Then it uprighted, produced a noise deep in its throat. Not a snarl, closer to abrading rocks, and retreated into the shade. It did not flee. It merely dissolved into the obscurity. There one moment, absent the next. I remained there, immobile, until the noises of the world returned, rushing back. My pulse was pounding. My objective distance was absent, scorched away by the actuality of what I had just witnessed. That entity was genuine, which implied the pact was genuine, which implied the wailing entities were genuine. I transported back to settlement as twilight deepened into evening, my thoughts attempting to reconstruct its structure around what I had observed. Ara was awaiting on the lodging stairs. She appeared aged in the diminishing illumination, more delicate, but her gaze were acute. You proceeded to the mine. How did you have observed the guardian of the pact. She did not phrase it as an inquiry. The elder, they name him, the initial of the Stonecoat group. He was assessing you, determining if you are danger or instrument. I am neither. Everyone is one or the other to entities like that. She advanced nearer. The celebration is tomorrow evening. The offering has been selected. It is a lad, Liam, whose parents' obligations will be cleared. The settlement will rejoice and then they will transport him to the mine. She halted. Will you adhere to your principles or will you adhere to your instinct? I considered principle number 6. You cannot heal an illness people believe is an inoculation. The settlement trusted the pact maintained them secure. They would protect it, even if I could demonstrate it was incorrect. What do you believe I should perform? I believe you should inquire yourself what you arrived here to pursue. A beast. You have discovered many. Which one will you combat? She rotated and proceeded into the obscurity, departing me solitary with the inquiry I did not wish to respond. The morning of the celebration, Red Rock altered itself into a distorted imitation of traditional America. I awakened to pounding. By the moment I attired and stepped outdoors, the municipal plaza had burst in decorations and flags. Tables were being arranged in orderly lines. A modest platform had materialized overnight. Equipped with an audio setup someone was examining with explosions of distortion. Individuals advanced through the setups with rehearsed proficiency, grinning, conversing, positioning blooms in glass containers like this was any modest settlement festivity and not the introduction to an approved homicide. I proceeded through it all, a specter at the banquet. Nobody contacted my gaze for extended. They understood, I understood, and the act persisted regardless. Principle number 6 repeated on loop in my head. You cannot heal an illness people believe is an inoculation. These individuals trusted the pact maintained them secure. They had persuaded themselves that 4 demises annually were the tolerable expense of endurance. The calculation was savage in its directness. 4 existences for 800. I could not rescue them from that trust. I could solely determine whether to integrate complicit or integrate the danger. I had dedicated the sleepless hours prior to sunrise forming my selection. Every route led to the identical result. A youngster was going to perish tonight unless I halted him. Near the border of the plaza, I located the kin, the Cardis. I had searched them in the lodgings directory, cross-checked them with the register. James Cardy, late 30s, had amassed the variety of obligation that arose from health expenses and misfortune. His spouse, Sarah, positioned next to him on a seat, grasping his palm with pale-knuckled force. They were not weeping. They appeared empty, hollow, like individuals who had already performed their grieving privately. Liam, their offspring, was perhaps 10 years aged. He positioned between them, silent, toying with a worn red play vehicle. He produced minor motor sounds under his exhalation. I advanced gradually. Sarah gazed up, acknowledgement and delicate expectation flashing across her expression. You are the examiner, Maya Finch. Are you here to halt this? There was no expectation in her tone, simply drained interest. I knelt down to gaze level with Liam. He possessed spots and required a trim. His footwear possessed animated figures on them. What is your vehicle's identity? He glanced at me with brown gaze too grave for his years. Brutus. That is a fine identity. Powerful. I gazed back at his guardian. Yes, I am going to halt this. James Cardy shook his head gradually. You cannot. The settlement, the pact. They have been performing this for over a century. Is shattered. I stated, you simply do not understand it yet. Maintain him near tonight. When I perform my action, transport him distant from the mind. Do not pause. Simply flee. I departed them there, incredulity and something delicate flashing in their faces. Back at the lodging, I opened my kit and arranged everything out on the mattress. The criminal instruments were ineffective now. I had advanced past trace gathering into interference. I charged the gear I had borne for years but wished never to employ. A carrier of highway signals altered to ignite brighter. Magnesium centers that would dazzle anything with vision. Metal particles in closed pouches. A capturing apparatus with new cells and my blade. Metal edge Rowan grip engraved with markings I had duplicated from an ancient text and employ. Safeguard symbols, the language of a conflict I had never desired to engage. I had discovered the difficult way that partially trusted safeguard sometimes functioned better than doubt. Metallic, cinder, sodium, the fundamental kit for facing entities that should not exist, but did regardless. I fastened the blade to my strap and inspected the signals. My palms were not trembling. That was positive. Dread was beneficial only if it heightened concentration. I required to be acute tonight. The celebration commenced at midday. I compelled myself to participate, to watch. The meals were shared. Dishes, barbecued protein, cakes. A regional group performed adaptations of rural tunes. Youngsters dashed through the assembly. If I had not understood the reality, it would have appeared wholesome. but I could observe the fissures. The mirth was excessively loud, the dialogues excessively vivid, and beneath it all, a flow of unease so dense it was nearly tangible. Mayor Vance delivered an address from the platform about society and custom and appreciation. He positioned at the speaker in his fine attire, perspiring despite the cover. He omitted the pact directly, but every term was infused. We offer thanks for the security of our basin. We respect the ancient methods that maintain us intact. Tonight, we restore our connections. The assembly cheered. Some of them possessed moisture in their gaze. I desired to yell. Instead, I consumed a portion of fruitcake and observed Sheriff Briggs observing me from opposite the plaza. His palm rested on his strap near his firearm. Not menacing, simply prepared. He understood I was a factor now, unforeseeable. As the sunlight descended toward the skyline, the celebration's atmosphere altered. The tunes ceased. The kin with youthful offspring began gathering, departing the assembly reduced to perhaps 50 individuals. The board, their kin, the upholders of the pact. The Cardis positioned isolated on their seat, encircled by vacant area like an isolation area. Mayor Vance neared them as twilight deepened. He uttered quietly, "Official." I could not detect the terms, but I did not require to. This was the formal call. James Cardy rose, assisted his spouse up, and grasped Liam's palm. They proceeded toward the north route toward the mine, encircled by a dispersed lineup of municipal authority. It was an escort disguised as a rite. I awaited until they were 100 yards distant. Then I pursued. The lineup advanced in quiet up the entry route. No one bore flames, simply torches, sensible and contemporary, which somehow rendered it inferior. This was not ancient savagery. This was modern wickedness, organized and proficient. When they arrived, the mine access, the assembly shaped a ring. Mayor Vance advanced forward, and in the ray of somebody's torch, I observed he was reciting from a note. We arrive in appreciation and restoration. We respect the pact of our ancestors. We offer freely what is requested that the basin may persist and the limits maintained firm. We present this existence in lieu of many. We request for safeguard, for the aversion of appetite, for another period of tranquility. It was unnerving in its official devotion. A municipal invocation, a public tribute. Liam was weeping now, silent sniffles. His mother grasped him. His father appeared like he had ceased inhaling. I emerged from the shades, my palm on the blade grip. "No," I stated, my tone sliced through the right like an edge. "This halts now. The pact is shattered." Every head rotated. Mayor Vance's expression became pale, then crimson. "Miss Finch, you do not comprehend what you are. I comprehend flawlessly. You are about to slay a youngster to sustain a mechanism that nourishes on your dread that concludes tonight." Sheriff Briggs advanced toward me, but before he could arrive me, the mine access breathed out. A surge of chill that reduced the warmth 20 degrees in an instant. The torches wavered. Somebody yelled. They emerged from the obscurity like horror's granted shape. The elder first, the entity I had observed before, enormous, its sandstone epidermis fracturing and reshaping with each shift, each advance releasing minor avalanches of red powder. But it was not solitary. 3 others appeared behind it, minor, but no less alarming. One shifted like fluid over rock, its exterior undulating. Another was onyx dark with lines that shone dim red. The third was almost transparent, crystal-like, capturing and breaking the torch ray. They shifted with watery elegance, their dark quartz gaze capturing and mirroring no illumination. The atmosphere filled with the noise of a braiding rock. The aroma was overpowering, heated rock and aged blood and something else that rendered my primal mind yelled predator. The assembly dispersed, but there was nowhere to escape. The stone coats encircled them, not menacing yet, simply confining. The elder neared Mayor Vance, who collapsed to his knees. "We deliver the offering," Vance stuttered as concurred. "As always, please." The elder's tone was like massive rocks tumbling down a slope. "The agreement is observed. The agreement is frail. The barrier quivers." It was not gazing at Vance. It was gazing at me. Those dark gaze fixed on mine with dreadful wisdom. "You revealed the terms," it stated. "You uttered the mystery. The pact exists in shade. You delivered it illumination. Illumination destroys it. Good, I stated, my pulse pounding. It merited to perish. One of the other stone coats snarled, and the elder lifted a palm, or what substituted for a palm. Extended digits of rock and talon, the ancient barrier collapses. What restrains the appetite now? And that is when I detected it. From the remote wilderness, so dim at first I believed it was breeze, arrived a noise that resonated in my skeletons, a wail, then another superimposing, then dozens, hundreds, a unified lament of senseless appetite that rendered my dentition hurt and my sight blurred. I rotated toward the skyline. The atmosphere was quivering, not like warmth, like actuality was unraveling. The obscurity beyond the basin's border was shifting, streaming toward us like fluid shade against the calm of the evening atmosphere. Forms without form, openings without shape, entities that existed in the intervals between illumination and obscurity. The wailing entities, no longer restrained at distance, were arriving to consume. The assembly observed it too. The dread that swept through them was instinctive, complete. This was not the confined dread of the pact. This was the dread of annihilation. Mayor Vance was weeping openly. We maintained the agreement. We always maintained the agreement. Please, you must safeguard us. The elder rotated its dreadful gaze from me to the nearing terror, then back once more. When it uttered, its tone was softer, nearly weary. You shatter the ancient barrier. You construct the new one, or all is banquet. It was returning the selection back at me. The ancient pact was deceased, slain by revelation. The stone coats would not uphold it anymore. But without them, without some variety of accord, the wailing entities would devour everything in the basin. The settlement, the individuals, Liam, perhaps me. I gazed at Liam, still weeping, still alive. I gazed at the skyline where the quiver was expanding nearer, swifter. I gazed at the elder, ancient and foreign and awaiting. I had arrived here to halt a beast. I had discovered a mechanism, a settlement that had reconciled with wickedness for the purpose of endurance. I had shattered that mechanism. Now I had to exist with the outcomes or perish with them. Now I had to determine if shattering a flawed mechanism without a substitute was fairness or simply another variety of homicide. The wail increased louder. The atmosphere tasted like metal and cinder on the skyline. I could nearly observe them now, twisting formless forms that existed in the intervals between vision and obscurity. They were lovely and dreadful, and completely incorrect shapes that should not exist. Appetites that antedated cognition. The elder observed me with gaze like dark celestial bodies, enduring as rock. Select, it stated. The wail was increasing louder. I possessed perhaps 5 minutes before whatever was arriving arrived. 5 minutes to bargain a treaty with entities I had only just acknowledged were genuine, for a settlement that had expended a century slaying its own. I rotated to the elder. Its dark quartz gaze mirrored nothing, but I could sense its wisdom, ancient and enduring, awaiting. A new pact, I stated. My tone was firm. Years of witnessing in tribunal, of clarifying unimaginable incident locations to panels, had instructed me how to appear composed when my pulse was yelling. No additional person tributes. The settlement supplies animals instead. Bovines, ovines, whatever you require. Consistent shipments, recorded, uniform. The elder inclined its enormous head. Behind it, the other 3 stone coats altered, their exteriors undulating with what might have been curiosity or appetite. I could not determine. You present flesh? It stated, the tone like abrading land masses. We are not canines to be provided scraps. No, I concurred. You are pursuers, so pursue. I indicated toward the skyline where the quiver was expanding like lubricant across fluid. Those entities out there, the wailing entities, the ancient pact rendered you wardens. I am presenting you an opportunity to be hunters again. Active protection, not passive watch responsibility. You pursue them, you consume on them, and you safeguard this basin because it is your pursuing terrain, not because you are obligated to supervise persons who deceive their own. One of the minor stone coats, the onyx one with streaks of red, produced a noise like vapor escaping overheated rock. It sounded nearly like chuckling. The elder was hushed for an extended instant. The wail increased nearer. I could observe forms now on the skyline, twisting shapes that harmed to gaze at directly, shapes that should not exist in tri-dimensional realm. "And what do you present, Fleshwalker?" the elder inquired. "What epidermis do you place in this pursuit?" "My abilities," I stated. "I am a tracer. I comprehend designs, actions, how pursuers shift. I can assist you locate them, confine them, examine their frailties. I have expended 15 years pursuing entities that should not exist. I can instruct you what I understand, and I can acquire from you a collaboration, not an agreement of bondage. Attractive terms." The elder advanced nearer. I maintained my position, though every impulse yelled at me to escape. But terms are breeze. The ancient agreement shattered because it was observed, because you rendered it frail. Why would we rely new terms from the one who tainted the ancient? That was the actual inquiry, was it not? I had shattered their pact by revealing it. Why would they rely me to negotiate a new one? I gazed past the elder to where Mayor Vance knelt in the soil, still weeping, to Sheriff Briggs, who positioned with his palm on his firearm, ineffective and unsure, to the Cardis, grasping Liam between them, to all the faces of Red Rock illuminated by wavering torches, their dread complete and genuine, because I am not one of them, I stated softly. I do not pertain to this settlement. I do not gain from its falsehoods. I am a neutral entity, which is precisely what you require. Somebody to position between you and them. Somebody who will highlight breaches on both parties. I will be your observer, your inspector. The pact shattered because it was concealed, because it decayed in shade. I am suggesting we deliver it into the illumination, record it, uphold it equally. The elder bent down, bringing its expression level with mine. Its exhalation smelled of heated rock and mineral soil. You would be bound here. No roaming, no liberty. You would be announcer, the guardian of the bridge, the observer between realms. Always here, always watchful until you perish, or until the agreement perishes with you. My abdomen sank. I had been a nomad for 15 years, transporting from settlement to settlement, incident to incident, never remaining sufficient to establish bases. The notion of being attached to one location, to this location, seemed like a penalty. But the option was observing Liam perish, observing the wailing entities devour the basin, observing hundreds of individuals, culpable and blameless alike, ripped apart by forces they had attempted to confine through outrage. I accept, I stated, the elder uprighted. It gazed to its relatives, and some hushed exchange passed between them. Then it rotated back to me and extended a palm, extended digits of rock and talon potent enough to shatter my cranium. Then we confirm it, the elder stated. Not with blood, with intent. Demonstrate us your value, announcer. Demonstrate us you can pursue. The wail peaked. The atmosphere itself began to resonate, and from the wilderness's border, they arrived. The wailing entities were not firm. They were shift without shape, appetite without form. Where they contacted the soil, plants withered instantly to gray cinder. They shifted like lubricant flowing upward, defying attraction and reason. Their wail was not noise, it was void. A drawing emptiness that tugged at something deeper than detecting. I sensed it in my dentition, in my skeletons, in the empty areas of my torso. "Settlement border," I yelled, my tone slicing through the inaction. "We form our position at the basin access. Sheriff, acquire every transport with front lights up there now. I require illumination as much as you can provide me." Briggs gazed at me. "Now?" I demanded, and he shifted, yelling commands into his communicator. I rotated to the elder. "Your group can control terrain rock." "Yes," it assented, an abrading shift. "Then we require a barricade, material and emblematic, a boundary they cannot traverse without opposition. Can you elevate a crest at the border?" "We can mold rock," the elder thundered. "For a cost?" "The animals commence tomorrow," I stated. "Tonight you acquire initial slay on anything that traverses into this basin." Accord. The onyx stone coat snarled with what I was acquiring to identify as consent. The elder indicated, and all four of them commenced to shift with intent toward the basin's northern border. The assembly dispersed to permit them pass. I dashed to my pickup, pulled open my kit, and seized everything that might function. The altered signals with magnesium centers, spray containers of metal particles, my transportable audio setup from the rear, and the crisis beam I had placed for evening probes. My palms shifted on automatic, charging gear while my thoughts dashed through situations. Mayor Vance seized my limb as I passed. "You cannot truly combat those entities." "Then assist me attempt," I retorted. "Acquire everyone who is not combating back to the middle of settlement. Illuminations on in every structure. Entrances secured. Sodium boundaries if anyone possesses it. Those entities are attracted to void, to emptiness. Provide them sound, illumination, existence. Render the settlement noisy." He assented, stumbling toward the assembly, yelling directives. The basin's north access was a natural constriction where the route sliced through a space in the red rock cliffs. By the moment I arrived, Sheriff Briggs had gathered a rough boundary of transports, their front lights forming a barrier of brightness. The stone coats were already there, their palms, if you could name them that, pressed to the terrain. The soil trembled with noises like skeletons fracturing. A crest of rock and red soil began to ascend across the space, a rough barrier about torso high. It would not halt them, but it might delay them. I established up the audio setup on the cover of my pickup, directed it toward the nearing quiver, and linked my device. I retrieved a frequency creator application and adjusted it to the maximum pitch I could, then inserted layers, clashing tones, discordant spaces, the sound equivalent of sight interference. If the wailing entities were beings of emptiness and void, perhaps existence, even discordant, forceful existence, could repel them. The noise that burst from the amplifiers was hideous, a yelling barrier of sound that rendered everyone uncomfortable. But I increased it higher. The initial wailing entity arrived the crest. Up close, it was inferior. Its shape altered between conditions, sometimes vaguely person-like, sometimes simply a pillar of twisting shade, sometimes nothing but a warping in the atmosphere like warmth quiver. Where it contacted the elevated rock, the rock did not fracture. It matured. Centuries of decay occurred in moment, rock crumbling to powder. The elder bellowed, and the noise was not tone. It was rock avalanche, landslide, the rage of peaks. It and the other stone coat dashed forward, shifting swifter than anything that dimension should shift. When they struck the wailing entity, there was a noise like thunder, like realms clashing. The stone coats could contact them. Their rock tissue did not mature or fade under the wailing entity's consumption. They were combating emptiness with firmness, void with existence. The elder's talons tore through the twisting shape, and where it impacted, the wailing entity retreated, fragments of it dispersing like vapor. But there were more arriving, dozens of them, streaming toward us across the wilderness surface. I seized a signal, ignited it, and tossed it over the crest. The magnesium center sparked with white, intense brightness, and where its illumination contacted the wailing entities, they recoiled back. Not eradicated, but repelled. Illumination was agonizing to them. "Signals!" I yelled. "Anyone who can toss, seize a signal, and illuminate the boundary." Sheriff Briggs and several board members dashed to my pickup, seizing the carrier I had prepared. Within moments, the crest boundary was dotted with brilliant white spots of illumination, a group of magnesium celestial bodies restraining back the obscurity. The stone coats combated in the spaces between the illumination, their enormous shapes blurs of shift. They were proficient, savage, and I understood with a shiver, appreciating themselves. The onyx one had trapped a wailing entity against the rock crest and was methodically ripping it apart, its snarling, chuckling resonating across the basin. This was what they had been refused for a century. A genuine pursuit, genuine victim, genuine intent beyond being captivity wardens. A wailing entity escaped past the boundary, streaming through a space like fluid through grasped palms. It was directing straight for the settlement, straight for the grouped residences where individuals huddled behind secured entrances. I did not contemplate. I seized the metal particles, the spray container I had equipped with a force spout, and dashed to block. When I was near enough, I directed and discharged. A mass of metal fragments filled the atmosphere between me and the wailing entity. Where the metal contacted it, the being retreated, its shape breaking. Metal disrupted ethereal power, or so the hypothesis went. Apparently the hypothesis was correct. I progressed, spraying metal in managed explosions, forcing it back toward the crest boundary. The crystal-like stone coat observed what I was performing and dashed forward, capturing the confused, wailing entity in its enormous palms and smashing it. The being dissolved into vapor and was absent. The crystal stone coat gazed at me, its dark gaze indecipherable, and then it produced a noise that might have been consent before rotating back to the combat. We maintained the boundary for what seemed like hours, but was likely only 20 minutes. The signals burned down to cinders. The audio setup's power began to fail, the dreadful noise diminishing to a gasp. But gradually the force eased. The remaining wailing entities on the skyline halted progressing. They encircled, cautious now, testing for frailty, but no longer dashing forward in senseless appetite. The elder positioned at the middle of the crest, inhaling like a forge, red powder falling from its fractured rock epidermis. "They examine us," it stated. "They will return, but tonight they acquire. This basin possesses fangs again." I assented, too drained to utter. My palms were trembling from excitement, my ears buzzing from the audio distortion, my lungs scorching from vapor and metal powder. "The agreement is formed," the elder stated. "You combated beside us, you pursued, you are announcer now. Maya Finch, guardian of the new pact, observer between Stonecoat and Fleshwalker." It pressed one enormous palm to the terrain and the rock crest trembled. Markings appeared in the rock surface, glowing dim red like cooling magma. Ancient images and dreadful recording the conditions we just concurred to. An agreement inscribed in rock, observable to anyone who gazed. "It is observed." The elder stated it is firm. The barrier maintains. Then the stonecoats rotated and proceeded back toward the mine, shifting with the contentment of pursuers well satisfied. I positioned there, observing them depart, sensing the burden of what I had just performed settle onto my shoulders like bonds. A month afterward, I positioned in a modest workspace on Main Street, examining event accounts. The marker outdoors stated, "Maya Finch, a typical danger alleviation." Inside the surfaces were adorned with charts of the basin, diagrams tracking wailing entity movement designs, timetables for animal shipments to specified release locations near the mine. My workspace was disordered with two varieties of documents, criminal incident folders and treaty records. I had become precisely what the elder named me, a guardian of the bridge. Half the settlement despised me for concluding their simpler setup where only the fringes endure. Half were appreciative their offspring were secure. Mayor Vance had stepped down. Sheriff Briggs directed things now with a quiet, humbled proficiency. Liam Carty had delivered me treats yesterday, his mother grinning at me with moisture in her gaze. I had rescued her offspring, and now I could never depart. The telephone rang. An account of a peculiar shade near the former cemetery shifting against the illumination. Incorrect shape. I exhaled, charging my kit with acquainted fatigued accuracy signals, metal, sodium, metallic. The instruments of a position that would never conclude. Rex, my German shepherd, raised his head from his resting place in the corner, ears alert. "We do not get to depart anymore, boy," I stated, fastening the lead onto his neckband. "We repaired the beast, but we wetted the settlement. Let's go inspect the barrier." We proceeded out into the Nevada evening under celestial bodies that appeared altered now that I understood what shifted beneath them, and I commenced the watch that would characterize the remainder of my existence.